So welcome to our cabin, okay? See the sign up there? Live like heaven is on earth. And I can honestly say, I don't know what heaven looks like. Makes me a little nervous because I don't know if it can improve on this. So I think I am living in heaven. Now, my philosophy is that you can sort of duplicate that in your life. So we're about as happy as can be with our life. And so we're going to tell you about the history of this place and how it all started, because it didn't start here. This is where we ended. I was born in Serbia, former Yugoslavia. There's the house. And this is, I was 3 years old. The World War II was just ending. The Germans were being defeated. As the Germans were leaving, communists came in and took over our country. My father, who was an Orthodox priest, was arrested, declared enemy of the state. He was arrested and was scheduled to be executed the next day. He escaped that night. We didn't know for the next 4 years whether he was dead or alive, whether he survived or not. Didn't see him till 12 years later, where we hooked up in the United States. During that time, where the communists were looking for my father, they decided the best thing to do was wait for him at our house, because figured my dad was going to come for his family. Now, we lived in a parish house. That house was not ours. We didn't have a house. We didn't have anything. So now we lived in a parish house. So the communists decided to take over the house and gave us one room. So for the next 2.5 years, we lived with the communists. Now, I'm 3 years old. My sister's 7. My mother's 28. Now, I don't know, and I can only imagine what the life for my mother was like, where she's living with the enemy soldiers. And all I can remember as a kid, scared to death, that looking at the adults, everybody was like this, never looked up, because if you blinked the wrong way, you were either shot or put in jail. Then I never witnessed it because I was too little, but my cousin used to tell me about mass executions where they would kids had to leave high school and to line up on the street and to witness the executions. Okay, so now that ingrained you from the standpoint of don't mess with us. Okay, my cousin was junior in high school and ended up in jail for 1.5 years for nothing, because somebody overheard him say something. Okay, now, that being said, we're there, we have nothing. We moved from there. See that little shack? No heat, no water, no electricity. And the biggest thing was no windows. So you were basically one big closet. That's a big closet. And we had absolutely nothing. We had no food. We had no money. We were depending on the parishioners, although there was no church. The parishioners still felt a strong bond to the priest's family. So they would bring us stuff, eggs and milk and bread and that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, a few years later, we used to get it. And so it's over here, a care package from the United States. And every so often, the care package consisted of Robin Hood flour, a bag of Robin Hood flour. And I remember staying in the kitchen and my mother emptying that bag on the table, and there was very little left. And I looked at her and I said, what are we going to eat tomorrow? Because there was nothing left. And she walked away from it, so I don't see her crying, saying, we'll find something. That wasn't the worst of it. the worst time for me was this. See this outhouse? I had to go to an outhouse that was on stilts, and it was sort of guarded by rats underneath the outhouse. Now the rats were afraid of the adults, so they would scatter, but they weren't afraid of me. I'm this big. So I think they were looking for me. I looked like food. So I was definitely afraid of the rats. While the adults being in panic and in sheer fear of the communists, I was afraid of the rats. So what I did was get some rocks and put rocks in a pile, and I'd throw it at them until they scattered, and then I run into the outhouse. Well then, while I'm in there, they'd come back. So I had to get a pile of rocks inside. Okay. That was sheer agony for about 3 years. The only thing of value that we had was my dad left some books in the attic from his seminary days. Now, I didn't see a telephone nor TV until I was 15 years old. I wasn't away from the house more than a half a mile. Now, the only thing we had, he left some books from the seminary days, which ended up being the Greek classics, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. I started reading those. And it wasn't because I was trying to learn something. I had no idea what I was reading. My mother had a 5th grade education. So she didn't know. It wasn't her telling me, hey, go read these books. They're valuable. No, none of those. It was me. She was happy that I was just out of her way. So what happened is I spent most of my times in the woods reading those books. I didn't realize the effect those books had on me until when I was 25 years old. Okay. And that's how all this happened, was a result of those readings. We came here, my dad left. He ended up in Austria, ended up in a concentration camp for 4 years, and came to the United States and sent for us, and I was 15 when I came here. Didn't speak a word of English. Ended up going to Johnstown High School. I did okay in high school. Found out that, we have a tendency to look down on other countries. I failed 8th grade over there. I came here, and they didn't know where to put me. Like what grade? So I went Garfield, and they looked at, what kind of classes did you have? Well, I had trig, I had physics, I had chemistry. I said, those are all seniors in high school that start taking those. Well, they put me in an advanced class. So here I am. I failed 8th grade over there. I come here, and I'm outstanding in 9th grade over here. Okay? And then I go to UPJ, and that was a total disaster. I lasted a year and a half. Okay. They put me in a physics major because of my history. I was good in math and whatever. And so my major was, I was drinking beer. Going out every night. I discovered my new self, okay? So for a year and a half or whatever, 2 years, that's all I was doing. I had one passing grade. The rest were all Fs. My father didn't have much money. He says to me, look, this is kind of crazy. I don't have the money, and you're wasting it. You're better off just quitting. And I did. Then, what do? I started having odd jobs. I got a job cutting grass. I got at the church cemetery. I got a job at YMCA being a swimming instructor, and I got a job at as a playground instructor at the city of Johnstown, and a bartender job. So as a bartender, I'm in this really neat joint where a lot of business guys were coming, and it was a mixture of the patrons. And there was a gentleman with New York Life came as a customer and said to me, "I've been watching you. You're really good with people, and you ought to come and take a test and go into the insurance business." And I'm like, "There's no way I'm going to the insurance business." Because the thing was, the perception is, if you can't do anything else, you can always sell insurance or use cars. Those were the two options. Well, I didn't know anything about used cars, and I didn't know anything about insurance. But he was persistent. So finally, "Come on and take a test." I took a test. And in those days, I think if you can sign your name, you pass. So they hired me. 2 years later, I was fired 4 times. They had a heck of an agency, 40 people, approximately. I was the worst agent they had. So now they liked me. So they said, "Listen, this isn't for you. We made arrangements for you to go," got a job at Bethlehem Steel. Bethlehem Steel was hiring. They had an application for me, and I had a meeting set up. They're hiring me. This was already done. And the management of the New York Life was very happy to find a home for me because they liked me. However, I was not producing. So before, this was going to be like a week later, I had to go to Pittsburgh to a conference that the number one agent with the New York Life in the industry at that time was a gentleman who was featured on a cover of Fortune magazine, who was making $5 million a year selling insurance. Okay? Now, my manager was making $50,000 a year. The assistant manager that hired me was making $30,000 a year. I'm going to draw what they say, you get so much a month, but you have to make it up in sales. Okay? I was making $300 a month. There's this guy making, on a cover of Fortune magazine, $5 million a year. Okay? So I go to the meeting at the conference center in Pittsburgh, and he's being featured. And it's like, how do you go from this to this? Okay. Because the guys who are doing that business are MBAs from Wharton and, Harvard and whatever, all attorneys. And there's this guy, an ex-salesman. Well, what he did a presentation, brought his top client, national client, and their advisors, and he was showing us for 2.5 hours how he did things. Well, he was selling, I bought his 2 books. I devoured the 2 books. I called them. "Do you mind if I talk to you?" We talked. 3 days later, we meet in Johnstown. Management's telling me, "Sign the letter of resignation." I said, "I'm not going to sign the letter of resignation." And they're talking about, they said, the meeting was called to see everybody's reaction to the meeting. And so everybody said how brilliant this guy was. I said, "Wait a minute, time out. How brilliant can you be? Here's a manager making $50,000 a year, assistant manager making 30. None of us guys are, nobody's making this thing. Does anybody wonder how he made that transition?" And I said to the guy who was in charge of training, I said, "I'm not signing the letter of resignation. I think I can do this. I want to try this." Okay? They all laughed. There wasn't a person in the group that didn't laugh. Okay, mocking me. This was at the end of my second year. In the third year, I left the office. Okay, 25 years later, I was a presenter at the conference center in Pittsburgh where I was feature speaker. Okay, how do you make that quantum leap? It's possible. I learned most of that from the books in the attic when I was this big. Now we're going to go through the steps when we go to the house.